Hey, AfterBuzzers! Welcome back for BoJack Season 5, Part 2 of our coverage here at AfterBuzz TV. Today we get into more of the characters. In our Part 1, we talked about themes and structure and influences. Today we go deeper, talking about Flip, Gina, and Todd. And we've got some great news and gossip as well, so stay tuned.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. If you couldn't tell by the intro, we are going to be spoiler-filled in the sense that we assume you, at this point, have seen all of Season 5 for BoJack, and by the sheer extension, Seasons 1 through 4. You know, just making that assumption. Anywho, all that to say, we are going to be spoiler-filled, talking about the full length and breadth of the season. But who are we? Well, we are Kanika Lal.
Yes, hello everybody. Kanika Lal here. Follow me on Instagram at Kanika in LA.
And I'm at Phil Svitek. Thanks for joining us. As mentioned, we will be breaking down the season in multiple parts. So this is part 2 of our coverage. We encourage you, although it's not 100% necessary, to check out part 1 as well. We got into some deep, meaningful stuff. And in part 3, we will talk about Mr. Peanut Butter, Diane, Princess Carolyn, and of course the man himself, Filbert. Sorry, BoJack. So lots to discuss there, but of course we've got our hands full with these characters of Flip, Gina, and Todd. Before we get into any of them, though, I want to kind of, from your perspective, give me your vantage point into what you thought of their storylines this season.
Oh man, well, before we get in, I mean, I'm not sure if we're getting to Gina now, but in terms of like, I think her storyline was my favorite. Gina's, it was very relatable.
Out of these 3, or just every character?
Oh, we're talking about every single.
No,
character?
but you say that, so I want to just kind of.
It's so
understand.
hard. Everybody's is so dynamic and complex. But I love the introduction of the new character. So I would have to say Gina's was pretty. I don't know why, it was very noble of her,
Okay.
of how we've seen her from start to finish.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like these storylines. Obviously, Flip and Gina are much more interwoven, but the fact that Todd takes over at this job, which is essentially Netflix, but it's you know, the Time Watch company. What time is it now, Doc? That in itself was just hilarious. But I love Flip and Gina for the most part are characters that we're getting to know. I mean, we got an introduction to Flip, but this is the first time that we're really diving deeper with this season. Gina's certainly new, and Todd, I love the continued exploration of his sexuality.
I love how they just they stay true to what Todd would be doing right now at this moment. Like, he would be somehow getting himself into a mishap of being a CEO of this company and calling
Not
this
CEO.
Well, sorry, below the CEO. What is he again? Just like
He was in charge of ad sales.
Yeah, but he acted like a boss, and like his office was like insane.
Because he was a boss of ad sales.
Well, yeah, there's that. The CEO.
Right.
It's hilarious. I don't know. It's funny to watch Todd from season 1 as somebody crashing on BoJack's couch to somebody who actually grew up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that was interesting in his storyline.
Absolutely. Well, let's begin with Flip, because the fictional TV show that we're following is obviously his. Flip McVicker. They have some interesting names, and what I love about him is he represents, for those of you familiar with Hollywood, he represents the stereotypical showrunner of Hopefully Past. That's just so, like, I'm the showrunner, it's my story, I'm the auteur, and we're gonna go for it. And you know, in light of kind of, well, I want to ask you this question. Let me sort of backtrack mentally.
Okay.
He wants to tell his story, but it's a very, not that he's necessarily a bad person, I don't think, but it's a very white man story that's being told through Filbert. And obviously the climate's changing and he's being challenged to tell something different. and I don't know honestly what the question there is, but what did you think about kind of the commentary, let's say, of telling another white man's story versus something else, and how he was like, this is my story, this is what I'm telling?
First of all, before I get into Flip, let's go into the fact that the voice of Flip is Rami Malek from Mr. Robots. And I just saw him through Flip. Like his voice was voiced really well. But in terms of him as a character, he was so like insignificant to me. That's what made him so significant. He represented somebody who wanted all the credit for not really doing much work. He just wanted a show to be with the lead name, with having men be in charge and having a woman do a sex scene without her consent and wanting all the credit. Because he literally said that in the end of the season about how that's what TV is, one person's name on everybody else's due credit. So that I think he just represented what the creators probably wanted to showcase is somebody who needs a reality check, and yeah, he was just so small and minuscule to me, which made him so big in the overall grand scheme of what it means to be somebody who's really truly calling the shots of a Hollywood show, which is ironically was Diane. So yeah, a woman.
Well, I found it interesting the fact that he's pretentious, but he also lacks at moments, right? We've seen him cry and break down that he couldn't solve X, Y, and Z, and Diane helping him through certain moments, as you mentioned, but then also even Princess Carolyn being there and through her producing prowess is able to, really help him and achieve what he's trying to achieve. And so I think that is also very telling, and he represents, in a sense, like Hollywood isn't kind of generally gets represented in a state of arrested development, and he at times represents like this kid, as he's, when you talk about like wanting all the credit but doing none of the work. I think he has moments where he does something, but he doesn't go the full spectrum of what his job actually entails. Or we all get mental blocks, but at least saying to Diane, like, hey, I do need your help, and I think you bring a lot to the table, as opposed to saying, all right, you're going to be paid, but you're going to go in there, shut up, and then that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you do see a little kid inside an adult figure, a little kid who's like, oh my God, I'm in this big position. I have to prove myself, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I have to just pretend like I know what I'm doing. So he gets away with it by having that very, shruggish kind of attitude. So that's an interesting point. And his appearance is so telling to what kind of personality he kind of is too.
Yeah.
In a way, like what he wears and his face and his droopy eyes. Like he's just like a help me kind of like character. But I thought he did a really good job. Like the voice of him, Rami.
Oh, fantastic. And thinking about it, do you think Flip and BoJack are similar? And I asked it specifically because we opened the season with what looks like BoJack's house, but it's not. It's the set. And the set is built off of like an imagination that, Flip has never seen BoJack's house until that point.
Yeah.
Later on in the season. And so for him to be so succinctly connected, are they similar?
I think they're similar in the sense that they're lost and they're trying to find a way to make up for that, and not call attention to it, but do something else to distract from the sense that they are a little lost and confused in this adult world. But that's funny. I didn't actually think about it too much in the sense of how they could be similar, more versus like Mr. Peanut Butter or Diana. I see them more similar to BoJack, but I didn't call attention to that. Yeah.
Well, when you say like he's also trying to find himself, BoJack is too trying to find himself.
That's the way I saw them relating. Like Flip is trying to literally find his voice through this show and through the lead character Filbert. And BoJack has always been on a journey of trying to discover who he really is in this world. So,
and at a certain point, like once Diane really starts writing for the show, it's a lot different because, like BoJack's reaction to Filbert, I don't like him. He's a drunk. He's an asshole. I don't want to be him. And we'll talk about what that means for BoJack. But the fact that this is the character that Flip has written, I think is very telling. In a sense, you kind of You don't always, but you sort of, they tell you right what you know.
Yeah.
And I think this is the character that Flip knows because he is that character.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
So I think they're very...
Which makes you think, does the actual creator see anything in Flip?
I think he's I haven't yet met him, but in that sense, I think he suffers. He doesn't want to be any of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we talked about in part one, he had this moral obligation to kind of touch upon whitewashing through casting Alison Brie. You know, obviously he says that she's a great actress, but he wanted to kind of make a commentary on it. So he did, as we talked about, the Vietnam episode.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other moments, you know, when he talked about, it touches upon the Me Too movement. He felt in a way responsible, which is, you know, telling of how much this means to him.
Yeah.
And so I think his biggest fear, if I had to guess, is he doesn't want to be any of these characters. I mean, I don't know, just seeing it, what do you think it does? What does Flip say about the creator? Because he is the literal representation of a shirt, you know.
Or it's just the characters remind. I mean, I have no idea. We've never met the creator. We haven't talked to him. That would be awesome. But maybe the characters remind the creator of like a dark past or moments of when he had to kind of triumph over his obstacles. So they could be represent a small insecurity of. I mean, they represent a small insecurity of me, of a viewer, of an audience member watching. So. That would make sense if it's the creator.
The line is absolutely very blurred, right? Because the show comments on Hollywood and so forth. And I think if there's ever a line that's prevalent of like what this season of BoJack is, it's, I hope you all enjoy it because that means you are smart. If you don't get it, that means that my genius wasn't appreciated in my own time. And that's okay too. And I like the addition of, and that's okay too. So, and that's like the season 5, they went for it, you know, everyone, and not just the showrunner.
Yeah. And
they tried, and if it wasn't appreciated, that's okay too.
Yeah, as long as it was watched.
So, it's very interesting to look at it that way, and that, you know, unlike with Flip, because I don't know if with Flip I buy that he wouldn't be bitter, but I do think with the creators, if people didn't like what he was putting out, I think he wouldn't be as bitter.
Yeah.
So,
it's also funny. I'm not sure if we should talk about that now, but I saw somebody point out an article. I wish I could source it right now, but I'm forgetting what article it was. But they mentioned how BoJack was a victim of almost sexual assault himself in front of Flip. The scene when Flip made BoJack like take off his robe and was like pretty forceful and aggressive with him. And that just showcases a bigger issue and topic at hand about how men are also statistically abused and how that's always like kind of shrugged under the rug in comparison to women. So I thought that article was pretty specific to that scene. And I'm not sure if they did that on purpose or if that's like going over below, you know.
I mean, you could certainly take that out of it. I mean, in hindsight, yes, right? When I remember watching that episode in particular, and I was giving a lot of credit to Flip simply because he was calling BoJack on his BS. It's a very noble cause, and you know, in hindsight's 2020, as far as like Flip is certainly not the noble guy that I thought he was at that point in time. But for him to say like, okay, fine, you think it's sexist or whatever that I'm putting these women out and having them naked? Well, guess what? You're gonna do it. You know, and obviously we'll talk about kind of the sorry, pun wasn't intended this time. For the flip side of it when we talk about BoJack. Sorry,
that was good then.
I couldn't figure out another word, and then I was stuck. Anywho, one of the other aspects I want to talk about because it leads to the climax of the season is the whole taping of BoJack and really kind of doing his worst on Gina, right? And it stems from Flip's insistence that get the shot. You know, this is great. Like if it's artful, like if it tells the story better, we're gonna get it. and
You just that just sparked a reminder in my head about how far Hollywood productions are willing to go to get that shot, to get that scene. And it's actually been reported, probably not enough, probably more than it's been reported, about animals dying, about people actually just dying on set, just because of that killer shot. So during that scene when Flip was like, "Oh, put the camera rolling," who cares really if she's suffering? That was kind of a reference. So that just reminded me right now of that. I didn't think about that before. Did you? What was the initial point?
No, the initial point was that. I mean,
yeah.
I think it is a prevalent thing. I can look back to The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio and Inarritu. You know, they shot everything as real. Leonardo is a known, very vocal vegan, and he ate raw fish for a shot. So I don't know. I don't necessarily want to get too deep into it, but as far as if there is a question, I want to know from your perspective, because in a sense you are obviously you are in the industry, but you are a creative person. So should there be a line drawn for your art? Is there a line that is crossed, or if it services a greater good, then it's okay?
And I think that entirely depends on the artist. So sometimes an artist, it could be a sexual scene, it could be an abusive scene, it could be just personally your own inner battle of what you have to get over. If the artist themselves is okay with portraying that and going through with it, then there should be no other principle or whatever attached to it. It just, that's their consent and they're willing to do it. Like,
so in the case like with Gina,
well, that was definitely different.
Well, yeah, because she didn't, that was not part of it. She never consented to that. She consented to do the scene as is written, and to, okay, you're gonna go like this, and to then really do it.
Yeah, I think that scene was a way for it to go over the line.
Mm-hmm. And certainly Flip didn't stop it. So in that sense, I think.
But then again, did Flip really know? Maybe Flip was so invested in something else, it didn't even call attention to the fact that Gina was getting hurt. In fact, a lot of people were confused at first. In fact, there were people taking videos of it as opposed to helping the poor woman. So forget about Flip being a white man. It's people in general and how they don't really step in when they need to step in. They only step in when it's convenient for them.
Well,
just
I think you're right, but I also...
Sometimes, I'm not saying all the time. But
well, in this case, certainly.
In this case.
I think it shows the lack of true leadership that Flip represents, because in that moment, when you have a hard scene like that, you know, you of course plan it out, but you want to make everyone feel comfortable as they can be in that moment. So for lack of a better idea, you would have a safe word, or okay, hey, I want you guys to go for it, and as real as you can make it, obviously without hurting each other. How can we achieve the best thing artistically, but keep you guys safe, as and it's not something new to what Flip was willing to go to. I mean, Mr. Peanut Butter and BoJack, they were one-upping each other in terms of their stunts, which led to BoJack's injury.
Right.
So I don't think he sees them as sheep rather than human beings.
Yeah, that's true.
Flip is
as just a way. He sees it as a business, as a paycheck, as a way for the show to be better. So you're right. There should have been more boundaries established, and I'm not sure that's the conversation Flip wanted to have.
Not at all. and even just at the end, right, when the show doesn't go, he's like, well, there's got to be another sponsor or whatever, right, that can pick us up.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
I forgot what he mentioned, but he mentioned some site that it could go on. Mm-hmm. He was like, don't people... Something about booking tickets, booking airplane tickets. It could go on that kind of site. I thought it was hilarious.
Well, I think it was a commentary because Netflix is known for taking pre-existing TV shows and putting them on their service. So I think it was a commentary of hey, we'll just go somewhere else. AKA Netflix. Mm-hmm. So it was a very funny commentary.
But then that it brings up in a question which we don't have to get into, but I don't want to forget it. Do you think that people watch it? Actually, this is for audience members because we live in Hollywood. Phil and I, but maybe you don't. You could be streaming in from Kentucky. I wonder if there's certain things in the show that frustrate you because you're not sure of the reference itself. I feel like you have to really be on the inside to kind of get it. So I'm not sure if people experience that. And if you do, I'd be really curious to know if that's true.
Yeah, I can't answer that. So
yeah, just pointing that out there.
Absolutely. But you at home can.
Yes.
So get to it. Speaking of getting to it, let's talk about Gina.
Yeah.
I think she represented another strong female character, and I like that because I love Princess Carolyn and I love Diane, but to have a different sort of representation of a woman, and interact with BoJack, I thought it was nice to see. What did you think of Gina just overall?
So in the beginning,
because she was your favorite.
Yeah, I think the more I started analyzing her and reading up about her, I realized the sacrifice she had to do, like silent sacrifice. At first, in the beginning, I was just like, oh, she's just there. She plays a tough girl and she's having fun doing her job. By the way, voiced by Stephanie Beatrice, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I used to cover that show on here, so that's why she's a favorite.
Speaking of which,
yes,
natural transition. So hold on to all your thoughts. Speaking of other TV shows here at the network, I don't think it's any secret if you're tuning into us that we produce a lot of TV shows, like a lot. And in order to best cater to you and to make it as easy as possible, we've separated our YouTube channels based on genre. This one in particular is an animation. So you subscribe here and you get all the animation shows that we cover, such as South Park, which I also do. Sorry, shameless plug. Which is another TV show here at the network. That's over on our drama channel. But if you like reality TV, you can subscribe to reality TV. So there's various genres you can get into. All you have to do is subscribe, and you'll get all the catered content that you love from AfterBuzz directly to you. So don't hesitate. Subscribe now. And if you're worried about pesky notifications, don't be. They're optional. But what's not optional is my returning to the show. And Kanika, take it away with Gina and everything you were saying.
Yes, so Gina. So she made a comment in the beginning about how she shows up on set and she puts her head down and does the work. And that's why she keeps getting called back. And for someone who is strong, like opinionated, not as much as like Princess Carolyn or Diana, but she's still, that's strength to stay in your own lane. I think that's something that I battle with. Maybe other people battle with that. You kind of want to do more and say more, but for her, that's her measure for success. And then you see her almost not transform, but she stays with that. She commits with that thought till the end, even when this poor woman was being abused on set. And my God, that vision of her all choked up, the way they animated that was I was shook from that. She still stayed her ground in the sense of she put her head down and she continued to do her work because she did not want her hard work and her credit to be because of the name of somebody else and the name of a man. She wanted it because she earned it by putting her head down and continuing to work and finally getting recognition for what she deserves. And again, that takes even further strength to not be well, he choked me and now I'm a victim and now I'm in the limelight. And again, this is not me calling attention to any person who has stepped forward, but this is the reason why many women don't step forward who are in the public, who are in the limelight, because they want their name and their talents to be known because of their talents and not because of a man. And for me, I was that's a whole other light to this issue.
What's worse is the fact that it's not just her having to cover it up.
Yeah.
It's she publicly had to go out and deny it.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, we're just acting," and part of what they love now is the fact that they are quote a couple. And she is such a good actress as Gina that her doing that press hit and then being all lovey-dovey and so forth. She's gonna have to kind of ride it out for a little bit at least until before the quote breakup,
right?
And they'll have to come up with it just wasn't working out right. He didn't want kids or like whatever, right? Like the BS sort of lines that get fed versus what's really brewing underneath.
And having to say that over and over and over again in those press interviews.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is. And I think as far as the most emotional storyline, I really think it was her and BoJack's, and not because of BoJack. And, the fact that she's a new character and can have that impact on us, I think is credit to the show for being able to write her in such a way.
Yeah, exactly. And there wasn't too much of an emotional attachment between her and BoJack, even though they were kind of that, like, sleeping around and having that relationship. It didn't show her falling for him because they were like, why? Maybe that's a telling of her character as well. Like she can be somebody who doesn't have to have strings attached. Because they usually, Hollywood in the past at least, portrayed women as like, oh, you start to get feelings, but that didn't even happen with her.
No, but I don't think it speaks much to necessarily BoJack.
No,
he did show some gestures, although they weren't altruistic in any sense. She made the comment like, I don't date co-stars after like we're done rapping. And then he made that grand gesture and came over and continued, and that continued, and their relationship was. So he showed her evidence of, I think falsely, that he wanted her. And I don't know, do you think perhaps she should have been smarter to not get into this? Especially with a guy like BoJack who does, within the industry, have a history?
I think that she probably knew her own self, not worth, but like her self-tolerance of, maybe she's just somebody who wanted to be pleased and she was like, oh, this is convenient and I'm not going to get attached, nor will I get hurt. But maybe that wasn't the best judgment. But then again, I don't think she would have ever thought BoJack would have done what he did to her. That wasn't true to his character.
That she knew of.
That even we knew of. That even he knew of. We never thought that he would go that far. That was too far. Even the stuff that BoJack has done in the past.
Okay. Well, so that's certainly a great question to talk about when we talk about BoJack in part 3. Because I don't know. At this point, unfortunately, nothing surprised me with BoJack. But in that sense, it obviously surprised Gina. And I don't think that makes her a bad person by any means. You try to be I think it's a very noble thing to be as trustworthy as possible.
But things were going so well too in the beginning of that episode. They were actually like in sync, and BoJack was happy for her success. They could have been a star couple.
Could have been.
Would have been, should have been. Or shouldn't have been. Okay.
Well, let's talk about Todd, shall we? Because Todd has always been a comedic character.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. And it doesn't get more absurd than an asexual guy climbing the ladder of success.
Who doesn't even know that he's climbing any ladder. He's just going with the flow.
That's what I love about him. And one of the things I want to highlight before I forget is the fact that in no other show would I think structurally this would have worked, where they throw out kind of the end of a punchline, then they throw, meaning in the episode with the roller rink and so forth, right? Well, he goes to the roller rink, right? And then we kind of come back to it, and he's explaining like, hey, I got to go get my skates, but I hope I don't fall down the stairs because of it. And do you remember that moment? He like goes on for a minute of like, and it's the most convoluted thing you'll ever hear. And you're like, okay, that's only funny because I know where this is going to go. And that's what I love about the humor.
Yeah, I kind of remember the scene that you're talking about. But that's what Todd, like, that's like his delivery of the lines and like how he just says matter-of-fact things that it's like you didn't have to say that, but that's what makes it funny. Yeah. Is that you did say it that way. Yeah. It gave us a full scope, so yeah.
And that's why people think like he's such a good salesman, which leads him to his ad sales position. And
so many clocks in that room, though. Oh, obviously, what time is it right now? But okay, anyways.
Which I thought that just that in itself, like as quote unquote a character, where the studio's sending them notes of like, hey, we can't have watches because, or like whatever the case may be, because it'll deter people from checking the time. But we really see Todd go to a whole nother level because he's like, okay, listen, with Emily, just because I'm asexual doesn't mean I can't have a relationship with Emily.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I'm trying to find the right words to kind of describe, perhaps what the message and the meaning is. If I don't know what did it mean to you, in terms of him wanting to reconnect, and find some love in his life.
I think I might have to agree with some of the critiques of the representation of asexuality on the show. At first, I was like, wow, this is the first time a TV show is even calling attention to that. But I don't think I still understand the scope of it. And I don't think I understand it through Todd's perspective. I think in general, humans want to connect. Humans want a relationship. Humans want to feel love and be loved. I think that's just like the way that we were born, and other scientific reasons. And Todd exemplifies that, but I also don't get the asexual part of him. Because he doesn't want sex, how do we still know he might not want it? Just because he didn't call attention to it doesn't mean that he might not want it. So in my opinion, I don't think that they fully covered it, and maybe that's something that's next season we can go in a couple more episodes about. But
well, they certainly tested him, right?
That's true with what you're talking about with Yolanda.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get much more ridiculous when you go to a porn star family's house and they're all sex addicts.
Well, that's just scary though. Like, I don't even think he was tempted in that situation, but it was hilarious.
I mean, I don't know, like, it's a good question for our audience. Like, is that a dream come true? If you like sex and haven't had sex in a while, perhaps, like, you just, like, hey, go to a whole family that's, like, encouraging you to have sex and giving you all the right tools. And so he certainly was tested in that sense. And,
it was a crazy scene.
And even in that sense, right, when we talk about Todd being Todd, the whole setup to that entire thing between the sisters switching, she explained it to him very simply of like, okay, X, Y, and Z. And he's like, okay, as long as this is exactly how it's gonna go, then I will know. And then just the complete opposite happens, and he's like, I'm so confused. that I loved, and I think he has a lot of those moments of I feel so confused, not just sexuality.
Yeah, of course. And
he's the innocent.
He is innocent. He is somebody who's almost like a newborn into this like corrupted world, and he's just trying to like be good. And it's also, I don't know if you have a thought about him and BoJack. I am sad.
In what respect?
In the respect of like the sense like we saw such a bond between BoJack and Todd, and even though BoJack didn't treat Todd the best way, they still needed each other. And it just seems like Todd was so hurt by the past seasons of what BoJack did. I forgot the name of who was it? Was it Emily or was it? I'm getting confused now.
Which character? Give me like a plot point.
When BoJack, didn't he sleep with his friend?
Yeah, BoJack's done.
Well, it was Todd's friend.
Yeah.
Well, the point is just that we didn't see any sort of like interaction between him and BoJack this whole season. I'm not sure if that was on purpose, or are we just done exploring their relationship?
I don't think we are, but I think Todd, they have other stuff to contend with at the moment, both of them.
Yeah.
And, in particular, like, for one of the more interesting aspects that came out of this, that towards the end of the season, the whole Me Too time's up. And that's what I find ironic with naming the company what it's named. It's just like, what time is it?
Right.
Time's up.
Yeah.
That is just kind of very telling. But him creating Henry Fondle, the sex robot, and how it's one thing, like, when we talk about Todd's rise to success, he got pretty far up, but he didn't become the CEO.
No, right.
Because he's not sexual. And I think that was a commentary on that.
Wow.
Like, if only he was sexual, maybe he would have been. Whereas Henry Fondle, he's like, I want sex now.
Plug it in right now.
So I think there was definitely a commentary of like, if you're just a horny guy with just a lot of ego, you can rise to the top historically.
Sorry to all you CEOs out there.
So, I don't know.
Do you think that could have been a commentary on it?
I think it 100% was. Why would you?
Why would you make a robot?
Well, what would be evidence to disagree with the idea? Or what would be a different
An innocent
viewpoint?
mistake.
Well, for Todd, yes, but not for the
Not
robot.
for the robot, yeah.
You
But
know?
a lot of times the robot, I don't know, that robot confused me.
In
I was
what
like, are
way?
you trying to be sexual or are you just trying to be a robot? Because there were times when the robot was innocently a robot. No? Or did I miss that whole point? I'm oblivious to the...
Well, if you really want to get crazy and kind of come up with no solution, a robot has to be programmed by its creator.
That's what I was just thinking, yeah. So
Henry Fondle is, in essence, a creation of what Todd perceives sexual people as. And so...
like just horny and they need it right now and...
Yeah. Or maybe is it a creation taking on new life beyond what the creator had intended? Much like, you know, a commentary on, we talked about Flip, that could be one aspect of it. Certainly, I mean, this whole show, and, you know, once you put something out, it becomes someone else's. Or it is what it is. It's no longer your own.
I think I like that idea.
Okay.
It's like almost like the Frankenstein theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whoever you create, whatever we create, it's always going to have a mind of its own.
It certainly does.
I mean, I don't want my laptop to start saying things to me, so let's hope that maybe
yeah, but at the same time,
the
it
show
will
is
act.
true fiction.
It'll act the way it's programmed to act.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no different. Like, I mean, it's not like people who build software ever want bugs to be in the software, but I'm
Right.
sure your computer doesn't run 100% of the time. And you're like, it's not like, you know, the guy who created it is like, yeah, why don't every now and then you do this, it'll just crash.
Yeah.
So it's just a byproduct.
So yeah. So the robot's sexual needs was just a bug in the system.
All right. Any other stray observations about Todd, Flip, or Gina before we move into some news and gossip?
I'm going to see if there was any... Oh, I liked the one line that Gina said, and when she was playing the character in Filbert, she said that this case is like Love Actually. There's no leads. That was funny.
Nah, that was a good one. A lot of great humor.
There is. I tried writing down as much as I could, but there was not much else. No, I think that's it from my end.
All right, so let's get into some news and gossip, shall we?
Yeah.
AfterBuzz TV News.
All right, so the creator has said that much of the dialogue about the responsibility of an artist and the guilt of the accused came directly from meta discussions in the writer's room. In particular, #MeToo forced them to consider BoJack's own culpability. Quote, what is our responsibility to our audience? To signal, hey, this kind of behavior isn't cool. Don't emulate this. Another aspect, we sort of hinted at it, but just to reiterate, BoJack Horseman will continue to be available on Netflix, but it is also now on linear TV for the first time and accessible on Comedy Central. They acquired all 4 seasons, so not the 5th season, but all 4 seasons, the 49 episodes, and they are running this fall. So
That's huge.
100%.
For, you know, yeah, cable and TV. I mean, that's great. Or cable and streaming.
As we get into the holiday season, here's a great gift that you can get to someone who is a fan of BoJack, or ask it for yourself. Since I imagine you, obviously listening, are a fan of this. There's a book called The Art Before the Horseman that came out. It details how an episode gets made, from the writing through the animation and every step along the way. So it's directly, and it's not a book by somebody else. It's a book from the creators. So it doesn't get much better than that. It's from the horse's mouth. Mic drop. Now, BoJack has yet to be renewed for a 6th season, but they're, creatively speaking, they're saying this. There are things that they're considering about the show and the world. I don't feel like things have fully wrapped up in the narrative, and so there's a lot more to tell. So hopefully we will get a 6th season. I don't imagine we won't. One of the good news is this season has, last I checked, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which season 4 got 97, season 3 got 100, and season 2 got 100. So with those numbers alone, you're getting critical acclaim.
Yeah.
I don't think you scrap a show like this. I think there's more to tell with BoJack.
Even though the creator himself was just like, this is so hard to write. I have no idea how I go about doing it. I saw in an interview that he did, and it's like, how much more can you tell? But there's a lot more, I think, to explore with these characters.
I think so.
And they
too.
have so much to pull from what is happening around us. That's what I love about this kind of show that they created. Like, they have the freedom to do that. I found an interesting note, just the fact that hardly do the actors record together. They usually record separately. They table read together, but they record separately. And I'm not sure if I'm just not aware of what happens mostly for animated shows and movies per se, but to create such depth and interaction between two different characters and actors without being in the same room together, that's still they pulled off something pretty great. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and it happens more than you think, but still, nonetheless, it is something quite interesting because, when you're acting, you can sort of play off that. And, if you're the second person coming in, then you can kind of play off of it. But if you're the first, you kind of have to set the tone. And so it is interesting in that sense. And I agree. I mean, the way the characters interact. And it's one thing to do a drama show, but when you do comedy, timing is everything.
Yeah.
And that's what counts. But the good news is, as I said, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Here's a couple of quotes. So Forbes writes, BoJack Horseman proves to not only be a groundbreaking animation, but one of the most insightful stories on television right now, managing to maintain a weird, wonderful balance of depth and absurdity. From Entertainment Weekly, the show's sharp takedown of pop culture and society serves as an ultimatum to us, the audience. We can either improve our society and culture, or let it continue to shrink to such a cruel degree that it's worth asking if it's all right being part of this downward spiral of human behavior and culture. Judging by what's happening in our society currently, we may never get better and are one step away from overdosing on it, just like BoJack. So, interesting
That was a good
self-analysis.
line. Yeah.
All right, well, that has been your news and gossip for BoJack Horseman Season 5. As we wrap out this part 2, hopefully you've enjoyed it. Let us know what your thoughts on these characters were. You can also let us know your thoughts on the entire season. That's okay. We don't have to just keep it to this. But as mentioned in our part 1, we talked about the themes, the structure, and the influences. Today we talked about these characters. In our finale of our coverage, we will be talking about Mr. Peanut Butter, Diane, Princess Carolyn, and of course, the man himself, BoJack. In the meantime, where can people interact with you more?
Send me a DM on Instagram at Kanika in LA.
And I'm at Phil Svitek, and of course, follow at AfterBuzz TV for all the latest TV news coverage that we do here on the network. Thank you as always. We'll see you for part 3. Bye.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.